Joel Klatt reveals his weekly top 10 every week on his podcast, The Joel Klatt Show. It has a distinctly Big Ten flavor, much like the AP poll. Joel has Ohio State 1, Indiana 2, Oregon 6. He has Notre Dame 7th. That is 5 spots higher than where the AP poll sees the Irish. And Fox Sports lead game analyst Joel Klatt joining us now. Joel, always like to look back before we look ahead. You had Indiana this past week just pounding UCLA on Big Noon. And I'm not sure if people totally understand how all this works, but when you're calling a game, you typically get there a day or two in advance. You spend time around the team. You spend time in the facility, irrespective of on-the-field stuff. But what stands out to you from the time that you spent around Indiana's team?
Great question. I hadn't thought of that yet, but I will tell you there is a difference between a team that is on a high and experiencing something that they maybe didn't expect to experience. You know, there's like a euphoric nature, a team that gets on a run and it's like, man, isn't this great? Look at what we're doing. And there's a difference between a team like that and a team that you walk in and they just have expected this the whole time and everything's still ahead of them and everything is much more matter of fact. And yeah, you know, this is great, but everything is out ahead of us. And last year when I got to Indiana, it was before the Nebraska game, and there was a bit of a euphoric nature to it. And it's like, man, isn't this great? It's new. You know, can you believe this? Hopefully we can keep it up. This year I went in there and specifically talking with Fernando Mendoza, there was just such a matter-of-fact deal of like, we know we're very good, and we know we're going to win tomorrow, and everything's out ahead of us, and we're just going to continue to try to get better because our goals are still out ahead of us. I think that would be my biggest takeaway from meeting with them, even from meeting with the coaches. The coordinators are always nervous the day before the game, so they're always panicked about like, oh, well, if we get this blitz or this pressure, and they're pulling at their eyebrows, if you will. But the confidence from Kurt Cignetti, from Fernando Mendoza, and others. Talked to D'Angelo Pond, same thing. They know they're good, and they know that everything is still out ahead of them.
Very interesting. Yeah, one thing that stood out to me when we were there in the summer, and obviously it's a long time ago, but they had a chip on their shoulder. There was no sense of accomplishment over what had happened a year ago. Instead, it was people didn't think we were good enough, didn't think we belonged. We didn't represent ourselves in that Notre Dame game in quite the way that we wanted to, and now we're on a mission this year, and it's amazing. They played like a team on a mission. They've been phenomenal. They go to Maryland this week. You go to Columbus. You guys have Penn State against Ohio State. It is pretty interesting to think about what this game was supposed to be at the beginning of the year and what it is now. I mean, you think back to the preseason poll, and this was going to be 2 versus 3, and Penn State was the 2, not Ohio State. And now here we are with Ohio State number 1 in the country, and Penn State, we all know the story, having fired James Franklin and on this losing streak now. What are you expecting from Penn State in a game that certainly at the beginning of the year they had circled?
Everything. Nothing to lose. You know, I expect trick plays, different schematics in some respects, fakes in special teams. Absolutely nothing to lose. And one thing that I think that we failed to realize or grasp, I think, as the public consuming this downfall of Penn State is just how narrow the games have actually been in these 4 losses. Rev, I'm sure you guys have talked about this, but you know, they're in double overtime against Oregon and have the football to go win. UCLA, they're driving, they have the football to go win. They lose by a point to Northwestern, by a point to Iowa. And by the way, Iowa is a really good football team, in particular in that building. Iowa is now just a 2-loss team. They lost on a field goal late against Iowa State in what is always an emotional early season rivalry. And then they lose to Indiana, who we just described as one of the best teams in all of college football. They were tied 13-13 with that team with 1:50 to go in Kinnick. So Penn State is not a bad football team. In fact, this is still one of the top talented rosters in college football. They just have lost some tight games. And so I expect them to play with reckless abandon in a lot of respect. And the more fascinating part for me, to be honest with you, is this matchup between Jim Knowles, former Ohio State coordinator, against Ryan Day and Brian Hartline. Both sets of guys, so Ohio State against Penn State and Penn State against Ohio State, they will know uniquely and intimately exactly what the other guy likes to do with the structure of his unit, defensive and offensive, the tendencies that they have, how they like to fix problems. And so from a matchup standpoint and an entertainment standpoint, that's something that I'm most anticipating watching on Saturday.
Yeah, it's interesting. We talked about kind of the same storyline last week with Ryan Walters going up against Brett Bielema in Illinois. There's more recency here, and it doesn't seem like, if you read between the lines, it doesn't seem like it was the greatest departure for Jim Knowles from Columbus.
No.
So,
I think that Ohio State's going to play really aggressively on offense, right?
Yeah.
Think about it. And again, you guys cover this every single day, and you do such a good job of it.
Thank you.
Ohio State has played, I would say, like very different philosophies based on the game. Very close to the vest against Texas. Very close to the vest against Washington up in Husky Stadium. Wisconsin, air it out. So it's like I'm wondering a bit of like, well, which version are we going to get? And I anticipate an aggressive Buckeyes offense to let the passing game go, because it's pretty clear that the Buckeyes passing game, now that Julian Sayin has his feet wet, that he is the most accurate passer in college football. They've got the best tandem on the outside in college football. All due respect to Indiana with Cooper and Surratt. They've got the best tandem in college football, Smith and Carnell Tate. They can throw the football on anybody, and I anticipate that they're going to be aggressive in this game.
Are you concerned at all about their run game? Ryan Day was asked a little bit about it coming out of the bye. I was listening to his news conference this week, and he said, in so many words, we wish it was a little bit more dynamic. We wish we had a featured tailback that was more, wasn't exactly the verbiage, but that was kind of what he was hinting at. Does it concern you at all? Or to your point, when you got a guy who's completing 80% to the two best receivers in the country and the best defense in the country, do you just say, we're okay?
Listen, it's a concern in that you'd like it to be better. It's not a concern in that it has not impacted them at all. They've been able to win conservative game plans and aggressive game plans, and partly because of their defense. Their defense has only given up 41 points total on the season. It would be more concerning if it was very clear and abundantly clear that when they didn't run the football well, it also hampered their passing game, right? So, like, that's the way I feel about USC. When USC is one-dimensional, I don't think they throw the football with near the efficiency or accuracy or potency as they do when they're balanced and they can run the football first because of their RPO game. I don't feel that way about Ohio State. The passing game is not impacted by the run game like other teams. And because of that, it doesn't rise to the level of panic for me. It's a concern in that you'd like it to be better. They'd like it to be better. But I've also seen this team, and I've seen it countless times. The COVID year is a great example. They morphed into a great running team late in the season with Trey Sermon. He set the Ohio State single-game record in the Big Ten championship game against Northwestern. They weren't running the football great early in that season. And granted, they got started in October, and that was a weird year. But this team grew last year from a team that didn't throw the football well down the field to a team that annihilated everybody throwing the football down the field in the playoff. And that's one thing I've always really respected about Coach Day, his staff, and what they do at Ohio State is that they evaluate where they need to get better, and then they go about the business of becoming better in those areas. And generally speaking, that happens. So I trust what I've seen before, based on prior experience, that that's going to get better towards the end of the year.
You mentioned USC in that answer. They've got a really interesting game on the road against Nebraska. It's a huge game for both of these teams. We can kind of talk about the context. There are a number of teams in the Big Ten. You've already talked about Iowa. Teams that are still, were they to win out, are in that college football playoff discussion. How do you see USC, Nebraska here? What's the deciding factor in this one?
Well, kind of based on that last answer that I gave you, when USC is balanced, they're really difficult to stop, and it's one of the better offenses in all of college football. They're going up against a team in Nebraska that is really poor stopping the run, 15th in the Big Ten stopping the run. And if you're telling me that you can give Lincoln Riley as a play caller, Jaden Maiava as a quarterback, and that passing in Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane, if you can give them a run game to go with it, they are going to score 35 points. They're just that good. They're that dynamic. Now, the games that they've struggled, Illinois took away their ability to run it. Notre Dame took away their ability to run it. And then their defense succumbed to those power running games downhill to Illinois and to Notre Dame. I don't view Nebraska in the same way I view Illinois and Notre Dame. And in that, I don't think that they're just going to be able to win the line of scrimmage with consistency the entire game. They don't protect the passer very well. We saw that against Minnesota. Didn't he get sacked 9 times, Rev? I believe that's
9
right.
times. Only once though last week against Northwestern.
Right, but that's like Ferris Bueller territory. 9 times. I have it right here, Mrs. Bueller. That concerns me because USC can get after the passer a little bit. They've shown that ability. And so this is a matchup that I just think is bad for Nebraska, good for USC, even though the game is on the road. And that's one of the areas where USC has got to get over the hump is can you go on the road and play well and get a win? And, we haven't seen that a ton. That game against Illinois is a concern, certainly. But I like USC in that one. Speaking
of trying to get over the hump, Nebraska, 3,332 days since they last beat a ranked team. We'll see whether or not this is the day. I know it's crazy, right? It is crazy.
Hey, Rev, I grew up in Colorado.
No, I know.
I rooted for Colorado. These were old Big 8 foes, and then we played them in the Big 12.
Right.
That just doesn't compute to me.
It's crazy.
I don't think people realize. I'm 43. Anybody younger than me thinks like, oh, Nebraska. It's like Nebraska was Alabama. They were the college football program for years and decades. And that run that they had in the 90s, that's probably the best 3 or 4 teams in a row that any program's ever had. Maybe Miami in the early 2000s had teams that were that good, but my goodness, 3,000 days?
I know, it's crazy. Hey, just in that context, I'll leave you on this. We're talking about Nebraska and USC, and obviously you've said you think USC's in better shape than Nebraska. You were talking a little bit about Iowa, the respect you have for them. I think we kind of know, well, we certainly know Indiana and Ohio State are in great shape. We think that Oregon is in really great shape for the playoff as well. Who do you think that 4th team can be from the Big Ten? We have spent a lot of time talking about this and talking about the different candidates. Washington would be in that discussion.
Yeah.
Where would you go?
Based on schedule, the best opportunity for a 4th team is Washington, because Iowa has difficulty down the stretch. USC has difficulty down the stretch. Washington and Michigan, I should say both of those. It would be Washington or Michigan because they are going to be favored until their last games. The problem is that their last games are difficult, but schedule-wise, Washington hosts Oregon, Michigan hosts Ohio State, and I don't know if you want to give one the advantage over the other. Maybe Michigan's won 4 straight over Ohio State, but those are the teams that I think are going to be 9-2, playing their rival in their home stadium with a win and get in style of game. 60 minutes to get into the playoff. I've talked about Washington all year. They are underrated. They're going to be 9-2 when they face Oregon. I believe it. They're healthier on the offensive line. I was just texting with Jed. They were not healthy against Michigan. Now they're healthy. They're a better team. Michigan is starting to figure it out, play complementary style of football, playing Michigan football. I think those 2 teams are the best chance. Iowa just has a tough November. I think USC has a tough November. By the way, Oregon has a really tough November. Oregon still has to play at Iowa, at Washington, and home to USC. So this idea that Oregon is just going to coast through, man, back to Ferris Bueller. If he thinks he's just going to breeze through these last few months of high school, Oregon, they're going to have to play really good football to be an 11-1 team. There's a possibility they could wind up 10-2.
I'm with you. I really appreciate the Ferris Bueller references. I know you have no way of knowing this, but Ferris Bueller was filmed at my high school while I was in high school. So
come on,
you have taken me back. Yes, Joel, great
Sloan
stuff.
Peterson,
Sloan Peterson, that drive where they picked her up in the sports car. That's my high school.
That was your high school.
North. Yeah, go Spartans.
Hey, just roll her own bones out here, and I'll release your daughter.
All right, my friend. Enjoy Columbus. We'll look forward to the call with you and Gus and Jenny. Take care.
You got it. See you, bud.